to arrive today. Hello, Jar of Marble Dwellers and Jar of Marble Curious. My name's Linda. This is my podcast called Jar of Marbles. I'm so glad that you're able to make it today. We've got a bit of a beauty, I reckon, of a podcast today. It's about vinyls and cassettes, which of course is talking about an era that was, well, it was a big part of my era and for many before me. I just thought it would be interesting to talk about that era, the records, the memories that are around them, and maybe odd little story that just happened to happen about that time as well. We all need a story. We all need to know that it's not just us doing odd things at different times. So I thought I'd just tell the entire world. Yes, because that makes sense. But anyway, let's go. Glad you're here. Oh, I do come from a very special time where vinyls and cassettes were our normality, that we had record players that you played your records on, and you had 45s and 78s. 45 were the smaller and the 78 like an album. Cassettes were huge because bit by bit people were starting to get cassette players in their homes, and even more modern and up to the minute was cassette players in your car. I know, hold on to your hats. But it was so wonderful suddenly you weren't reliant on the radio anymore, and back in the day anyway, we weren't really being bombarded by lots of ads. It really was, lots of music. But as time went by, we became very modern, and we got cassette and radio players that you could put batteries in them, so then you could take them places with you rather than obviously an electrical cord into the wall. Don't even be thinking about Bluetooth. It's a little bit, you're getting ahead there a little bit, Harry. Oh, shut up. Oh, Bob. Look, see, he's always around, isn't he? Always. I remember one time I had been warned by my father that he'd bought a portable cassette radio player, and my parents were going away for that weekend. He left it in the hallway and he said, anything happens to that, don't bother coming home. So the very next day, I went to the beach with the portable cassette radio player and with a girlfriend, and then we met all our friends and people we didn't know. Went swimming, had a really great time, got home and realised I'd forgotten it. Oh, that was quite a bit of trouble ensued after that, but that's really another story. In fact, that story is in my book, a book that I've written called Except Not Me. I'm just haven't got to the point of sort of editing it, really. Well, I've started probably the first 10,000 words, but it can be a little bit overwhelming when you're looking at, well, this is 90,000 words, and because I'm really interested in a few projects at the moment, it keeps on being put to the back. But I will get to it. I will self-publish, and in that book is a lot of stories, the back stories to what would seem to be just an ordinary day in life. But no, not really. So meanwhile, back to vinyls and cassettes. Back in the day, your parents tend to be the ones that had the records, and you would listen to, their Scottish ballads and whatever else. My parents being Scottish, that's what they played a lot. The odd bit of Billy Connolly back in the day, before anybody had heard of him in New Zealand. My parents' family was sending albums over, and of course we'd never heard anything quite like it, although I must say that I was raised on that kind of humour. My parents were from Glasgow and Edinburgh and up that way, and their humour was really out there. So Billy Connolly just made absolute sense, had no problem understanding his accent, obviously because I was raised by two Scots people. But vinyls and cassettes, one of my favourites at the time was a Tom Jones album, and when nobody was home, I would close the lounge curtains, dim the lights. That was another little modern addition. We had a dimmer, so you could dim the lights down, sort of create a bit of a mood, as you would when you're 10. And I would get on the coffee table, and I would be Tom Jones' backup singer. And in fact, without realising it, that was how I was really strengthening my voice, and I was training myself in, light and shade with my voice to really belt out those big Tom Jones notes. And so I would just copy him, not realizing that I was actually teaching myself how to really sing strongly. Also, Cilla Black, she was another fantastic artist. I loved her voice, and there was always a bit of drama and a bit of colour, so that also meant that you would have to create a bit of drama by turning your back to the audience and then whizzing around right on cue. And so they're just all really great memories, and I was really, how would you say, I was exposed to quite a bit different kind of music, as most of us would have been back in the day, between mum and dad's, Scottish type music, and some of it was really funny, Lonnie Donegan and My Old Man's Dustman and Harry Seacombe, and that gave me that opportunity to develop my opera voice, La Donne Mobile, and I would sing like that, and people would always look around the room trying to find where that voice came from, even though I had just done it right in front of them. People are funny, aren't they? People can be quite strange. Did make these observations very young in my day. Cassettes, loved cassettes because you could record yourself on them. You could buy blank cassettes or accidentally cover over important cassettes. That's another day too. But I loved creating and singing, and I'd started teaching myself how to play the guitar when I was about 13, and I would then start writing songs because I thought that's what you did. If you taught yourself how to play an instrument, then of course you wrote music. I then would sing the songs and then while recording them on these cassettes. And I mean, these little numbers are somewhere, even if they're at the bottom of the ocean, what I'd give to be able to get my hands on those cassettes. But anyway, moving on. So I also then started writing skits, and I would have fun with, creating plays, putting on different voices. Oh, you didn't? Yes, I did, Bob, as hard as it might be for you to accept. But so cassettes and vinyls, they just open up this world of memory. Now, regarding the Tom Jones album, while living here in Australia, I moved over here some 40 years ago, and over time I decided I was going to start developing or building my LP collection, because when I had gone back to New Zealand for a holiday to go and get my albums, they were kind of gone, like a lot of things. So I thought, right, I'll start another collection. And because they were not modern anymore, I could pick them up for a song everywhere and anywhere, normally at op shops, and they'd have them in some box discarded at the back of the room. And so it was nothing to get an album for 20 cents, 50 cents, and now and then if it was really great, $6. But I found a Tom Jones album, exactly the same album that I used to play over and over and over and over as a child. But the strange thing about it was it had exactly the same marks on the actual record and the same tears and scratches on the actual record cover. And I remember when I picked it up, I just looked at it and I just sort of thought, how could this be? Like, it was exact. And while I can't claim to have a photographic memory, I've got a very good memory. And this was just a little bit, doo-doo-doo-doo. Anywho, it's just one of those moments I just never really forgot. So another great thing about cassettes was when my 3 children were growing up, I used to interview them, and this is right from the age before they could even speak. And then bit by bit, as they get older, I would have the microphone in my hand. We'd be having to record right next to the stereo because you couldn't get too far away from it. Again, you must remember, no Bluetooth, nothing like that. And I'd go, hello, what's your name? And then Laura, my eldest, would go, you know my name. And I'd just give her a look. And she'd go, Laura. And how old are you? 3. So those recordings went on with all of my 3 daughters till they were about 10, 11, 12. And I am always interested by voice, because as children, we have little chipmunk voices, don't we? We sound so cute. And then at some point, we get our big lady voices, or our big boy voices. We're no longer speaking like little chipmunks, as I say. So So they turned into little treasures, which is actually one of the roads that I took that ultimately led to teaching myself how to convert files and record and write and edit, etc., because I realised that these cassettes, which were dated back to the 80s, that I was going to have to convert them, otherwise we'd lose them forever. So I taught myself how to convert them to digital files so that I could upload them onto USBs and then give a USB each to my children. No doubt by the time they convert them, USBs will be, a thing of the past. But the point was, and is that was a path that took me onto another path, without any intention of it bringing me to where I am now. Now I look back on all the different skills that I've taught myself or been exposed to, or I've had help with, etc., or the questions that I've required answering. It really has been quite interesting how this has been very, very helpful because, for example, with the podcast, for anybody that doesn't know, if you're going onto Spotify, that's an MP3, it's an audio file. If you're going onto YouTube, even if it's not a video, you've just got a thumbnail, that's an MP4. So all of those need converting. And when you are looking at all of that, that's really quite overwhelming. It's like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But you know what, you can, and I have, and I'm here to say that you can, and that yes, otherwise I'm just going to keep on saying the same thing. You can. When I've reflected on all that I've been learning and seeing and experienced for many, many years, sort of landed me here right now doing this, which is, I love that. And it's been a conscious journey. It's not like, oh, this is such a surprise. How did this happen? And I think that's also a gift of being older. You're really much more aware of what is happening around you, and it's fun, if nothing else, to reflect and look back and go, wow, I have actually been doing all sorts of things like this all my life, which has led me to this moment. And when I had thought so many years ago about doing a podcast, I had just always thought that it would be a good fit, and I knew that it was either going to be something that I might have a go at if I found the right time, because I've always been busy one way or another. And I think certainly the pandemic played a part in me having time, the quietness to start working out how to play with GarageBand, for example, when I started just writing music and using all the different loops and creating different little pieces, which I did for my own podcast. So that was another really cool thing to experience. And I think whenever we feel like we don't have enough time, see, that was a pretty cool cue, wasn't it, hey? No, it wasn't. Yes, it was, Bob. Now, I think that there's something that Jane Fonda said, which is, it's never too late. Never too late to start over, and never too late to be happy. And I was reading the other day, and I read, the past is an old shell, too small to contain your new life that wants to break through. I love that. I think that's really great. I love it when you read something or you hear something that just speaks to you and it resonates and inspires you. I love that, because sometimes we can go through periods of time where things just don't really feel very inspiring. And I think, again, if we keep on saying that kind of stuff to ourselves, it can actually manifest that way. So I think it's good to give yourself credit for the days that you for the days where you thought that you couldn't, and your passion is just waiting for your courage to catch up. And sometimes it's got nothing to do with your age. Sometimes it's just a moment where you just think, yeah, I'm going to do this. Because at the end of the day, what is the worst thing that'll happen? The worst thing that'll happen is it won't work out. I'll tell you what, I can live with that. And if you find yourself not where you thought you'd be, may you see it as ways that you're still growing, and may you be able to recognise that. I heard this funny saying the other day, it's got nothing to do with anything, but my ex taught me that not every I love you is real, and I taught him neither is every orgasm. Yeah, that one moved me too. And suddenly you know it's time to start something now. Excuse me. You've just got to trust that magic of beginnings. It's a distinct feeling. That's how it felt for me when I realised I had learned everything I needed to at least make a start consciously, like start a beginning, start doing this, and that it would be the start of evolving. I knew that it wasn't perfect, what I was presenting. I knew that I still had so much to learn, but the only way that I was going to be able to teach myself and to actually learn was just to get on with it, get started, throw it out there. And why not to an international audience where you have no idea who's listening, maybe no one, maybe 2 or 3 people are, bless your hearts. Who knows though? That bit doesn't throw me at all. I find this a hoot. So I agreed with me that I was just going to give it a go. I've listened back to my first couple of podcasts and I thought, oh, and like I say, you've got to give it a go, don't you? And hopefully by the time I've been doing this for a while, that they will improve and hopefully it'll be received as me, just being me, with exactly the same essence consistently. And when I don't get to a point where I'm saying it's 9:45 and pretend that I'm a radio star, I could do that too. That'd be fun. But anyway, I digress. How unlike me. How unlike you. Oh, down boy, Bob. I guess I'm sharing all of this with you because I'd like to think that if there is something that you're thinking about doing, hell, do it. I mean, if there's an idea, something you want to experiment with, somewhere you want to go, something you want to start, give it a go. I mean, there are so many things that I have put my hand to and it didn't come to anything. And it doesn't matter. You know, I did all these courses because I was going for a particular role. And then when I actually got these roles, oh, could you just kill me now? It was so bloody boring. But I tell you, I always came away with experiences, a deeper understanding, but mostly within myself and usually a good story or two. Hence why a podcast is always a good idea for me. It does matter in as much as I gave it a go. I don't really want to do that after all. And I think that if you can, you know, trust yourself enough just to have a go. I mean, look, honestly, I could be doing this podcast in 10 years' time and I might have a huge following of 7 and I will love each and every one of you. Well, I was going to say individually, but that's a bit much. But, you know, I will appreciate that. But in this instance, this is a classic example of me having to do this for myself. I turn 60 and one day it's going to be 70 if I'm lucky. I'm feeling lucky. And if I've still got air in my lungs, you out there could be a lot younger or older than me, but if you're on this earth and you're breathing, then hey, give it a go. So that means that you are relevant, that there is something you can do that no one else can do. I mean, it's a blowout that there's so many of us and yet we're all different. So I remember hearing that saying about no one being like you and you have something to offer that no one else can. And I used to think, oh, I wonder what it could be. You know what it is. It's putting value to it, putting value to yourself. It's appreciating yourself enough to know to, again, look, I'm going to give this a go and see what happens. Sometimes we can get stuck in jobs where there is a certain kind of conduct expected that it's not anything like who you are, where you have to be, say, corporate, with one's corporate hat and the language, buzzwords, the in-house lingo, so to speak, so that you're in the know. Then there's meetings, a certain way of conducting the meetings, and that is the way, the only way, apparently. Like bullying mantras and mission statements, we all know it's bollocks. So when you're not in the rigid climate, say, of the corporate environment, you can reveal who you truly, wholly are, one would hope. People I know who are super smart people with these jobs that have impossible to remember titles, letters after their names, and they're usually also amazing musicians, writers, artists or cooks, just wonderful people to talk to, and so kind and giving, just so smart. And you just go, geez, you know really big words, don't you? I mean, I know about 4 big words, so we're sort of in that circle of trust. Sometimes when we are going through difficulty, it's really hard to imagine busting out and doing something completely different. But sometimes it can come through the form of a hobby, something that you put down years ago and never thought you'd pick up again. There's just so much to us human beings. A saying that I saw, the idea is to die young as late as possible. As far as I can see, I think I'm going to be doing all right in that state. Back to vinyls and cassettes. I don't really listen to cassettes so much anymore, but I do listen to my vinyls. I've got quite a nice little vinyl collection, and went out and got myself a record player. And I've got to say, it's just beautiful. And because at my studio overlooks my garden, just painting a bit of a picture for you here, I can put on one of my records and just listen to them. And of course, they seem to stop very quickly, having 4 or 5 songs each side. But that's all a part of the romance, And I just love coming out, maybe put on a Bowie or Tom Jones, or there's so many, The Church, there's so many B-52s. I just love listening to my vinyls, and I've seen, obviously, they're making a bit of a comeback, and, the hi-fi stores and all the rest of it, and I don't know, I like my originals. They're seasoned, and they crackle a bit in places, and that's also a little bit of the romance in it for me. And it's really nice if I'm sitting here having a cup of tea, listening to a record, just watching the light hit the plants in the back garden. I just think, wow, it's a good day to be alive, I say. This is a piece written by Pantajali. When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Isn't that lovely? Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is, Bob. So, in line with everything else that I was saying before, at some point you have to stop placing your happiness in the future and begin to appreciate right now, maybe today. I mean, stop explaining yourself. I think it's sometimes that we're trying to, explain to someone or people what it is we'd like to do, and we end up in some kind of hole or completely in knots. I think there really is something to be said about the power of keeping things to yourself, unless of course it's if you're around someone or people that are really supporting you and really want you to, to do what it is that you're thinking about doing. But I love the idea that, be that person who wakes up with purpose and intent, and that you show up. Don't give up. Just show up. That's all you have to do. And just believe in yourself. Even if it's just believing in, I'll just give this a go. I know I've said that. I mean, I should really just be calling this podcast, I'm just going to give it a go. But it's true, because if you're willing to work for it and you're willing to believe that it's possible, there's a very, very good chance that it's going to come off. There's a very good chance of that. Now, I just want to say again that, as I always say at the end of every podcast, that it's just lovely that you've popped in, and that that you've taken the time to listen. If you've got this far, honest to God, you deserve a trophy, a medal, a small check. No, there's no checks. Maybe a medal. Oh, look, what about a mention? I'll give you a mention. Well, I hope that you're well, and I hope that life is treating you well. Say good day to the family and the dog for me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.